looking for a stable
Good afternoon, Earth.
model.
This is Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico.
And there they found
Working on
Plato,
oil painting
Aristotle, the dramatists,
Their
so forth,
Disease,
and
Your
they
Gift.
created classicism. Now notice that we're talking here about the 1400s.
Yes. That's what I titled this one. Okay.
Was
Alright, I
brought to
changed
birth
gears
in
a couple of
the
times, and I'm
1400s,
just making sure I'm
2,000
titling it the right
years
thing.
after the death
Fairly
of
certain that's what it is.
Plato.
Okay, so
And we
I've got
still,
an alizarin
to a
crimson and a permanent red
tremendous
glaze
degree,
mixed,
we are
and what
the
I'm going to do with
children
that
of this
is kind of coat the lower portion, and then this stripe
which we
here
call the Renaissance.
leading into her
Our
hair,
theories of law,
and then I've got a bright
our
turquoise
theories of
mixed
government,
that will be sort
our
of
notion
the
of justice,
angelic
our
portion of the
notions
composition
city
bleeding down
planning,
into the
of
red,
architecture,
and then
of,
we'll start highlighting,
all
developing,
kind of military
and
planning
accentuating
and so forth
everything.
and so on,
So
are
here we
all
go.
drawn from classical Greek and Roman models that were brought back from the dead 500 years ago by a bunch of Italian investment bankers who thought this was a good model to build on, to hang their civilization on. And now this has run out. The contradictions are too extreme. The classicism, I don't want to say it's failed, but it has just taken us as far as it can go. So now we confront great existential confusion. We confront cultural values completely different from our own, such as rainforest aborigines and so forth. We confront the toxic legacy of modern science, the retreating species counts of the earth, the decaying atmosphere, all these things. So we must now reach far back into time for a new cultural model. Our crisis is so great that we have to reach back to the High Paleolithic, to the moment immediately before the invention of agriculture and the creation of the dominator ego. And I see, people talk about the new age and the new paradigm and this and that. Well, it's larger than that. It's been going on throughout the 20th century. The discovery of the purification of mescaline in Berlin in 1897. Freud begins to publish around the turn of the century. Jung, they are discovering the primitive unconscious. They are revealing to Edvardian and Viennese ladies and gentlemen of great culture and breeding that they have inside them, brawling, incestuous, violent, lust-driven animal natures. In other words, they are reintroducing an awareness of the primitive into this tremendously constipated, male-dominated, late 19th century, post-Victorian cultural milieu. And then, following hard upon them, the Impressionists in the 1880s giving way to analytical cubism, and all the Cubism arose as a result of the fascination of a few artists with primitive African masks. Picasso and his circle, and when they brought this stuff back to Paris in 1905 through 15, nobody had ever seen this kind of thing, and these guys began trying to deconstruct the pictorial space of people like Degas and those people into the pictorial space of the primitive mentality. Meanwhile, anthropologists were bringing in, and Fraser published The Golden Bough, which laid before the European intellectual community this vast repository of integrated mythology. National Socialism, surrealism, all of these things, some negative, some positive, are all aspects of the 20th century fascination and revivification of the primitive. Rock and roll, the rise of sexual permissiveness, the rise of styles of dancing which were not this, the minuet and so forth. All of this signals this fascination with the primitive, but at the center of it stand two phenomena, or two integrated phenomena. The personality of the shaman and the fact of the psychedelic experience. And we've come late to that. You know, the 1960s is when this theme was first announced for any large number of people. And I think, you know, that we have to consciously deconstruct this constipated, classical, industrial, linear, dominator civilization that we're trapped inside, because it's a vehicle we can't steer. It's glued to the tracks which run right over the cliff. If we cannot alter the assumptions of this society, if the George Bushes and Helmut Kohls of this world are going to continue to run things, then, you know, head for the bunkers, folks, and pray, because the bunkers aren't going to be any consolation. Yeah.
I'm listening very closely to you for a few days. And I hear what you're saying here, and I'm trying to formulate a question. I guess my question is, and maybe it's a political question, because there's so many people who at this moment, although they recognize that not all is well in Dodge, you know, they're reasonably comfortable still. They have a certain amount of self-image and wealth and personality invested in this terrible corrupt system. And by and large, they're the ones who are at the reins and control the resources. You know, how does the archaic revival be made attractive and seductive and pleasurable and ecstatic to these people especially? Not to mention, you know, the influx of sort of Latino economic refugees into the country who just want a television set, man.
Yeah, well, this is a real problem, that the third world people can only aspire to the example they've been given, and it's an example of consumerism and so forth.
May I just say?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's an example not only of consumerism, but of a certain freedom and liberation of human expressiveness and spirit that they perceive. You know, it's not all the people are fucked up. And they look at America and this consumer culture, and they see the good parts, you know.
Well, I think that you can't reform human nature. So what we have to do then is dematerialize the culture in some way. And I don't talk too much about this because, frankly, I haven't really got a clue as to how you would do that. I mean, I know there's nanotechnology and so forth and so on, but what we need to do is take the matter out of thingdom so that everybody can live in the Frank Lloyd Wright waterfall house. I mean, it costs $9.95, and you buy it at the 7-Eleven and take it home and slap it on, and you can live in it. So that's why I'm interested. That's why I, in spite of my nature boy thrust in most contexts, I'm very interested in virtual reality and the idea of making the imagination explicit or interiorizing the exterior world. I mean, one vision that I've had of a kind of future utopia is, it opens on a world which looks like our world of 10,000 years ago. I mean, people live tribally, they are physically perfect, they're naked, they want for nothing, but they appear to have no material culture whatsoever. Then when you shift your point of view so that you're inside one of these people's heads, you discover that when they close their eyes, there are menus hanging in space in front of them. And by glancing at these menus with a certain intensity, they are able to make their way into a culture that is entirely three-dimensionally present for them, but which nowhere impinges on the world of three-dimensional space. Sort of the idea that you could have the Vatican Library installed optionally when you have dental work. you know, and then just by pushing your tongue over there, why, you could view the Fabrianos or whatever. I don't think this is that far-fetched. I mean, a lot of money is going toward this. Money can be made from this. And remember, I was saying that we have to figure out, unless we're ready to, you know, hang the rascals, then we're going to have to figure out some way to make money out of saving the world so that capitalism can cease its rapacious destruction of things. And I think these entertainment technologies are the way to go. I think that what we should all be trading in 15 or 20 years from now is ideas. And ideas should be worth more than anything. And this is happening. I mean, I was impressed at this. There was a virtual reality conference here last summer, and a number of people came from Fujitsu. And the Japanese are not dragging their ass on this stuff the way we are. They understand what it is. And Fujitsu has a research team of 30 people who work full-time on virtual reality. And their data sampling rates and their equipment was far superior to anything here. The Japanese culture is an excellent model for this future that we're trying to move into, because what the Japanese seem to understand that nobody else understands is they've had centuries of experience with limited resource management. And, you know, our style is, you know, cut it down, dig it out, and when it's gone, move on. And now we're at the end of our rope with that. We have to manage this thing like a spaceship, limited resources. Yeah.
Isn't looking at the context of, you know, the purpose that events, a presumed purpose for the sequence of events or history or transformation, and technology and the evolution of technology being the driver is now, you know, allowing all of these things as being, what else can you expect to have happened that, you know, with that kind of power and with a monkey brain, what else would it do than just what it's done?
That's right.
And do you see this as a not necessarily something to take apart to undo a wrong, but as a necessary intermediate or mediation toward a future that is being created through these stresses that this technology has set up?
Yeah, history is just a 25,000-year dash from the trees to the starship. And while it's going on, it's wild and woolly, but it only lasts like that. And then you're in the starship. Because we are like bacteria or something in the shortness of our lifespan, to us, 25,000 years, you can get lost in the middle of that and you can't see either end. But from the point of view of a species, it's just instantaneous. Anyway, these are the ravings of an unhinged mind. I noticed last week, speaking of unhinged minds, did any of you see Science News with the cover Cretaceous catastrophe that shows an asteroid impacting the Earth? You know, this thing happened 65 million years ago. It's now pretty well confirmed that a very large object collided with the Earth and laid down a layer of iridium isotope that you can find in sedimentary material all over the world at a certain stratigraphic level. It's called the KT boundary, the Cretaceous Tertiary boundary. 65 million years ago, everything on this planet larger than a chicken died. And some people think in a single moment, in a single cataclysmic impact. But what was interesting about this Science News article was they were saying there is puzzling data on the KT boundary, because it does appear that there was this immense impact and catastrophe. But what's peculiar is there appears to have been a major dieback of species underway before the impact. That in the million years preceding the impact, there was some kind of echo crisis on the planet. And then this asteroid struck. And I thought, it had never occurred to me before, I thought, well, two possibilities occurred to me. Is it possible, the dinosaurs that we find are the lumbering, enormous ones, but it's always agreed that there were a vast number of small-boned, gray seal dinosaurs that were much smaller. Is it possible that there was a breakout of intelligence in the Saurian line, and that as we were able to emerge in just under 3 million years, is it possible that there was an intelligent species of a reptilian sort that was actually evolving a technical civilization, which then caused this dieback of species? I mean, this had never occurred to me before, and then it was wiped out by this impact. Although whenever you have intelligent life in the presence of large explosions, a safe bet is that the intelligent life is responsible for the large explosions. So it may be that there was war in heaven 60 million years ago. The other possibility, which occurred to me second, was one scenario for solving our problem is a mass migration into the past. That if we could, we could literally dump this whole scene and go 100 million years into the past of the planet and set up there in a confined zone. If it were only 10,000 years deep, it would never show in any fossil record. It would just be, this, if we held ourselves to a 10,000 year wide window, that's such a brief period of time and so long ago that we would basically just appear to have disappeared. Anyway, I'm constantly churning through this stuff, trying to understand. I think this is a haunted planet, and we are a haunted species. This business of these asteroidal impacts, you see, as an aficionado of novelty, somebody who can project 500 million years on a computer screen, and at 500 million years, the only kind of novelty you're tracking is biological novelty, the sudden punctuated forward surges of evolution and so forth. Well, every solid body in the solar system is heavily cratered. Some of these craters are planet smashers. There is considerable and ever-increasing evidence that the cosmic neighborhood is fairly unstable. One of the scenarios that I've had to entertain in trying to understand the voice inside the mushroom, the time wave, the 2012 thing, and so forth and so on, is it possible that biology is somehow prescient, that biology somehow exists in eternity and knows the fate of the planet, and that what we are is a desperate strategy of escape, and that the planet actually can sense the possibility of a complete life-destroying asteroidal impact. And so a species, a bipedal monkey with binocular vision, has been led into the antechamber of nature's secrets in order to build machineries and unleash energies sufficient to either deflect that incoming object or flee the planet in anticipation of it. I think life is tremendously tenacious and has an immense capacity to organize itself to meet any crisis, provided it knows it's coming. And, there are scars on this planet, enormous scars. There's a scar 1.5 billion years old on the Canadian shield that is twice the size of the lunar crater Copernicus. This thing that came down 50,000 years ago out near Flagstaff, Arizona, that was a tiny object. It was something like 30 meters across. It was moving 9 times the speed of a rifle bullet. It was 6 miles into the Earth in the first second of impact. Everything within 800 miles died instantly, and this was a nothing burger, this thing. An object 500 meters across the planet would ring like a gong for 10,000 years. And the thing at the KT boundary, the thing which killed the dinosaurs, they now believe they have the impact point. Oh, in fact, this is interesting, and it reflects on our psychedelic mix. They've searched the planet for the impact point of the KT killer, whatever it was, and now they've located it, and ground zero is at a little town called Progreso on the northern coast of Yucatan. At the time of the impact, the entire area was a shallow ocean. But what I find eerie about the location of this impact point is 65 million years afterwards, on this exact spot, a civilization will arise obsessed with the end of time and determined to give a date to it. I mean, it's within 110 miles of Chichen Itza. It's near Zebel Chaltun. It's right in the heart of classic Maya country. So it's almost as though, the question that I would like to have you leave here with is, a new appreciation of how hard it is to figure out what is going on. I mean, what is going on? It's very easy to smooth it all out and say, that the Pentagon runs it all and so forth and so on. But once you start digging, I mean, the world is a labyrinth, a sponge of interconnected labyrinthine interstices, the weirdest connections. Who knew who and what they were doing about it. And then, these reports that come in, and some are false and some are true, but the sum total of it all is to paint a picture of excruciating weirdness. And people are just not pushing the right buttons. I mean, I guarantee you take 5 dried grams of psilocybin in silent darkness in your own living room on a Saturday night, and, Ferdinand Magellan, move over. You will see things no one has ever seen before, and no one will ever see again. I mean, and these things are real. They have existential validity. They have the power to move hearts and change lives if we can but bring them back into the domain of the group mind, of the tribal campfire. We are surrounded by oceans of alien beauty, alien intent, bizarre ideas. I mean, I'm convinced that these things which the types offer in the DMT holding can are idea systems. Ultimately, the time wave, which took me 4 years to create and requires computer assistance and all this stuff, it was just one of those things. I mean, they have closets full of this stuff. And they just pull it out and show it to you and take it away. Oh, you like that? Try this. How about this? Each one of these things, stretches the monkey mind to its limits. I am a rationalist, And yet if you press into these weird zones, you can overcome what I call the trailer court syndrome, which is, that nobody ever gets kidnapped by a flying saucer except people who live in trailer courts. You can overcome that. You, with your BA in psychology and your friendship with Rollo May, you can be kidnapped by flying saucers. Yeah.
Something about crop circles. I know. I just wanted. You mentioned that earlier, and I know these guys said that they made the crop circles.
Well, the crop circles are such fun. First of all, it is a wonderful example of my contention that the world is made of language. Because whatever the crop circles are, what they are is they are glyphs of some sort. I mean, they are designed to be seen. It would be absurd to maintain that someone was trying not to be seen. So these crop circles are to be looked at, and then radiating out from the act of looking at them, reality ripples like air above a desert highway. The UFO people who were just on the brink of seeking honest work, suddenly, this tremendous shot in the arm, everybody declares themselves a Syriologist.
All right, take two, coming up.
To understand the psychology behind the crop circles. And here we have come up with two ideas, which I'll try out on you. The first thing to notice about the crop circles is that southern England is peppered with military bases, of high security military bases where nuclear weapons, cruise missiles, so forth and so on, it's all there. So now we're asked to believe that the airspace of England is being nightly violated by an agency or agencies unseen and undetectable in the very area where these nuclear weapons are stored, and we're asked to believe that the Ministry of Defense is not concerned about this. That either means that the Ministry of Defense is falling down on their job, or they must know what's going on. Well, now Jacques Vallée is the person who pioneered in the study of flying saucers. He said the way to understand flying saucers is don't ask who's inside or where do they come from. Ask what effect are they having. If you assume they are succeeding in what they want to do, then watch what they do and you will see what their purpose is. Okay, so what effect are the crop circles having? Well, what they have done is they are a magnet for the fringe establishment of the British Isles to come out of the woodwork and proclaim the imminence of some great event. And they have come more and more out on this limb. And what I speculated to Rupert was that MI5, which is British intelligence, it's possible that they could actually view the New Age as a resurgence of paganism that threatens the Christian establishment of Anglican England. And so what they have done is they've created a disinformation program. They will lure all these people out onto this limb where they are all saying, couldn't be done by human beings, absolutely beyond the power of science to explain. And then they will reveal a team of MI5 folks who say, watch, we'll do it for world TV. You people are all flakes. You should never have gained the power in this society that you have, and now you do have to go find honest work.
Those two guys who...
Those two, yeah, they seemed like that. Well, so then we came up with a yet more elaborate theory, which I somewhat prefer. The only country that has really taken an interest in these crop circles, other than the English themselves, are the Japanese. And this has gotten immense coverage. in Japan, in the popular press. And when you go to these crop circles, the number of Japanese is astonishing, because it has been written into all these tours, apparently, and it's a photographic subject, and it's very courant, and so forth. So it's a big deal. So what I suggested to Rupert was MITI, which is the Ministry of Trade and Industry, is obviously carrying on a clandestine project in the study of semiotics, in the study of the Western mind and how it relates to the manipulation of certain symbols, because they are in charge of marketing and advertising and creating marketing psychology in Japan. So what I think we're dealing with here is a ultra-clandestine team of ninja stem snappers who pose as Japanese tourists and television crews and so forth, and then at the drop of a hat can flash into this Zen stem snapping mode and create these things, and the press that it generates and the discussion provides a very deep index into the English mind. Notice how eerily appealing to the English mind this is, and it's possible that you can extend this to the cattle mutilations of a few years ago in the Midwest, because the relationship of cattle mutilations in the lonely western prairie under a crescent moon, the relationship of that image to the American mystique of the lonesome cowboy and the gunfight at the OK Corral and all that is eerily similar to the relationship of the English mind to its earth mysteries out there on the Salisbury Plain. So I think it's a human agency, and that therefore it's some kind of a disinformation project. It's very interesting that these two guys came forward, because it completely shifted the argument from this no human being could possibly do it to they couldn't have possibly done all of them. It was like a deep defensive mood, and I was amazed at the vehemence of people in England, because I thought it was good fun and that you could talk to anybody about it and talk about the Ministry of Trade and Industry and MI5 and people were like, they were shocked at my lack of sensitivity to the emerging messages from the telluric depths of the suffering earth. Hey, maybe it's happening, but I was raised in the tradition of Occam's razor, which says hypotheses should not be multiplied without necessity, and I saw no necessity of reaching out to that.
You're listening to the Psychedelic Salon, where people are changing their lives one thought at a time.
Until near the end, when Terrence got into his rap about the ninja stem snappers, well, I was thinking that he was going to leave us on a real downer with all of his talk about asteroid impacts and things like that, which, of course, is probably even more topical today than it was back in 1992 when this recording was made. But his tongue-in-cheek crop circle theories got him back to where early on in this talk he said,
I should make it clear,
From New York and Sheffield, England, this is Democracy Now!
We need to negotiate the bombs. We'll negotiate the bombs, and we're very good at it.
The U.S. is threatening to return to all-out war with Iran after 2 days of trading missile and drone strikes across the region. Have negotiations failed? We'll get the latest. Then it's the opening day of the FIFA World Cup, hosted across North America. Today's opener is in Mexico.
This has been one of the most expensive World Cups in history, with tickets that are practically inaccessible to the working class population here in the country. And on top of that, there are social movements, teachers, unions, protests in the street of Mexico, making demands in this moment where the world's attention is on the country.
We'll go to Mexico and to Philadelphia to talk about ISIS presence at the game and how immigrant communities in the U.S. are preparing for the games. And to Paris to speak to former professional soccer player Jules Boykoff, author of Red Card, the 2026 World Cup, Sports Washing, and the FIFA Greed Machine. And finally, will Congress reauthorize a controversial part of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act before it expires on Friday? We'll talk to Cindy Cohen of the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Her new book is called Privacy's Defender, My 30-Year Fight Against Digital Surveillance. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Nermeen Sheikh in New York with Amy Goodman in Sheffield, England. The U.S. has struck Iran for a second day in a row, and President Trump is threatening more strikes as hopes for an imminent deal to end the war are fading. In retaliation, Iran said it launched missiles at the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, as well as air bases in Kuwait and Jordan. Iran has also declared the complete closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's foreign ministry says the U.S. strikes have rendered the ceasefire, quote, practically meaningless. On Wednesday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth threatened more strikes.
President Trump, he's willing to go back and fight as necessary, but has given Iran an open hand to make this deal. It's right there. They have that chance. They're choosing to play games. They're choosing to tap. If they want to tap, then the president will turn to the War Department. If we need to negotiate with bombs, we'll negotiate with bombs. And we're very good at it.
Hegseth was speaking during a visit to Guantanamo, the U.S. military base in Cuba. During his visit, Hegseth also said the Pentagon is, quote, postured for any possible contingency in Cuba, which is facing escalating threats from the Trump administration. A U.S. attack on a tanker off the coast of Oman has killed 3 Indian sailors. U.S. Central Command said the ship was targeted for attempting to transport oil from Iran in violation of the U.S. blockade. The UN's International Maritime Organization condemned the U.S. strike. The father of one of the sailors spoke to a reporter in India after learning his son had been killed after being at sea for over 8 months.
We were informed that a bomb had been dropped on the ship. What information have you received? We were informed that my son...
India has summoned a senior U.S. diplomat to launch a, quote, strong protest over the attack on the tanker. Amnesty International has accused Israel of ethnic cleansing as part of a, quote, brutal campaign to forcibly displace Palestinians and expand its control over land in the West Bank. Amnesty described the campaign as state-led and not just driven by rogue settlers. Amnesty is calling on nations to halt trade, cooperation, and investment relations that enable what it describes as Israel's, quote, unlawful occupation, apartheid, and ethnic cleansing. The Amnesty report was released on Wednesday, one day after Israeli settlers attacked the historic Christian village of Taiba in the West Bank. Settlers set fire to parts of the village and then attempted to block Palestinians from putting out the blazes. This is Father Bashar Fawadli, the parish priest of Taiba.
They forbidden us to arrive to the fire to turn it off. Arrive there, I want to make something very special for our people, to protect them. But we shooting 3 times. We arrived to the area. There is attacks by the settlers, and they also attacked our people. They stolen the phones, and they attacked also the cars.
On Wednesday morning, the FBI conducted a number of raids in Michigan targeting 8 pro-Palestinian activists who've been indicted on federal charges for allegedly threatening University of Michigan officials as part of a campaign to push the school to divest from Israel. The Michigan chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations condemned the arrests as an attempt to, quote, chill speech on campuses. In Northern Ireland, police in Belfast deployed water cannons to quell a second night of anti-immigration riots. 16 people were arrested, 12 police officers were injured. The unrest began earlier this week after an asylum seeker from Sudan was charged with attempted murder in a stabbing attack. In recent days, masked men have been seen attempting to burn families out of their homes. In one incident, 4 masked men reportedly chased a nurse of colour into the Ulster hospital. Hilary Benn, the UK Northern Ireland Secretary, condemned the violence as, quote, racist thuggery. Ben said a, quote, sense of terror and fear has spread among immigrant families in the area. U.S. inflation hit its highest level in 3 years. The Consumer Price Index rose at an annual rate of 4.2% in May. Energy prices accounted for more than 60% of the monthly increase, driven by the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran, which has disrupted oil supplies through the Strait of Hormuz. Gas prices are now up more than 40% compared to a year ago. President Trump dismissed the latest inflation data.
Sir, Mr. President, about the latest inflation number which came out this morning, could that be a...
No, I love it. The numbers were great. You know what I really love? I love the inflation.
Senator Elizabeth Warren responded to Trump writing online, so there you have it, President Trump loves that you're paying higher prices. A new report from New Jersey health inspectors finds bad employee hygiene, unclean surfaces, and poor food shortage at the ICE jail known as Delaney Hall in Newark, New Jersey. The report is based on an inspection of Delaney Hall last month, when inspectors were only given access to food service areas. Immigrants detained at Delaney Hall have launched a hunger and labor strike to protest inhumane conditions and demand their release, while protesters gathered outside in support. Clashes have repeatedly broken out between demonstrators and ICE agents. On Monday, educator and YouTube star Ms. Rachel paid a visit to the children of parents detained at Delaney Hall. On Wednesday, Ms. Rachel delivered over 500 packets of letters and pictures from immigrants detained at the ICE jail in Dilley, Texas, to Congress members, as well as a letter from herself urging Congress to end family detention and separation. This is Ms. Rachel.
I wanted to let you know that I'm at the Capitol in Washington, D.C., and I have your words right here and your letters, and I'm delivering them to members of Congress because they need to hear your voices. Your voices are so valuable. You have human rights, and your rights should never be violated, and no child should ever be in detention, and we need to end family detention. And I'm sending you so much love, and I'm always going to stand with you.
A new report from the Government Accountability Office has found sweeping failures at Camp East Montana, which is the federal government's largest ICE jail located in Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. The facility holds up to 5,000 detainees. Among the violations detailed in the report, a security guard lost a loaded firearm inside the facility. Immigrants with HIV and diabetes were left untreated. A contractor skipped required TB skin tests and instead used questionnaires. Detained immigrants were even offered cookies to clean their units. According to the GAO, the facility wasted up to $11.5 million of taxpayer funds during its first 2 weeks of operation last year. Back in March, Camp East Montana also faced a measles outbreak. U.S. measles cases have now topped 2,000 for the second straight year, but experts think the real number is about 3 times higher. The CDC confirmed cases across 38 states and Washington, D.C., with the majority among children and teenagers. About 92% of cases involve people who are unvaccinated or whose vaccination status is unknown. A poll by the Kaiser Family Foundation found that 20% of adults believe the false claim that the measles vaccine is more dangerous than the disease itself. This comes as the New York Times reports Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has demonstrated little interest in managing his sprawling department as he focuses on food and vaccine policies. The report says Kennedy rarely attends weekly meetings held by the chiefs of HHS's 13 operating divisions. When he does attend, according to colleagues who spoke with the Times, he often appears disengaged and spends the time scrolling on his phone. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Nermeen Sheikh in New York.
And I'm Amy Goodman in Sheffield, England, where the documentary about Democracy Now!, Steal the Story, Please, is screening at the Sheffield Doc Fest. It'll screen next week at Docs Ireland in Belfast. We welcome all of our viewers and listeners around the world.
The U.S. has struck Iran for a second day in a row, and President Trump is threatening more strikes as hopes for an immediate peace deal are fading. In retaliation, Iran has claimed it launched missiles at the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, as well as at air bases in Kuwait and Jordan. Iran has also declared the complete closure of the Strait of Hormuz, despite claims by the U.S. that it now effectively controls the strait. Iran's foreign ministry says the U.S. strikes have rendered the ceasefire, quote, practically meaningless. On Wednesday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth threatened more strikes.
President Trump, he's willing to go back and fight as necessary, but has given Iran an open hand to make this deal. It's right there. They have that chance. They're choosing to play games. They're choosing to tap. If they want to tap, then the president will turn to the War Department. If we need to negotiate with bombs, we'll negotiate with bombs.
Count me out.
And we're very good at it.
To talk about this and more, we go to Cambridge, Massachusetts, where we're joined by Rami Khoudi, Palestinian-American journalist, distinguished public policy fellow at the American University of Beirut. He's also a non-resident senior fellow at the Arab Center, Washington, D.C. Rami, welcome back to Democracy Now! So you have Hegseth saying we need to negotiate with bombs, we will negotiate with bombs, and we are very good at it. Can you talk about the significance of what has happened? Can you really say negotiations are broken down? President Trump has said dozens of times that we're very near a deal.
Thank you for having me, Amy. The negotiations have not broken down. They've been going on almost non-stop for several months now. The Qataris are getting more involved, the Pakistanis and others. The Americans have focused, as Hegseth said, have focused on the military side of things. And the military side of things is a huge stalemate. And the U.S. has found itself a bit in a corner. It can attack ferociously, as the Israelis can in Lebanon and throughout the region. But the military power of Israel and the U.S. has not achieved any of their serious political objectives. And this is a big disappointment to them, an embarrassment to them, but they don't know what to do. They're not negotiating seriously, and they just keep up the bravado of the attacks and the bombs and all that. I think the historic reality that before us is that Iran and Hezbollah have checked the U.S. and Israel in so many dimensions on the military side and forced them to come back to the negotiating table at some point and do a serious negotiations to address the underlying issues.
And Professor Khoudi, I mean, if we could talk a little bit more about the negotiations. Trump, of course, had said that it would have to pay the price. Iran would have to pay the price for taking too long to negotiate a deal, saying Iran was, quote, playing us for suckers. The last time that Iran and the U.S. Spoke directly, I believe, was in April. But talks have been continuing through intermediaries. If you could say what it is we know about the status of the talks at the moment and whether there's any expectation that Iran and the U.S. will resume the talks they had in Islamabad in April.
Well, I don't think it makes a huge amount of difference if they're sitting in the same room or if they're negotiating through Pakistan, Qatar, and others. The important point is they're narrowing down the differences between them, and they're narrowing down the points that they can agree on. And they almost had an agreement a couple of weeks ago to have a ceasefire, a full ceasefire for 60 days, and then negotiate the trickiest part, which is the nuclear issue and maybe some of the money that the U.S. is with holding and sanctions. There are issues that still have to be negotiated, but they both want to stop the war for sure. Netanyahu doesn't want to stop the war. They want to expand it, and they're doing that in Lebanon. So I think we're going to see this situation continue, where the U.S. talks to the various negotiators, maybe sits with the Iranians again, which would be a good thing. But at the same time, the really big dynamic, the big issue now, is the relationship between Israel and the United States. Israel has made it clear that it's not going to do what the U.S. tells it. Trump says he's in charge. The fact is we don't know who's in charge. And if Israel is allowed to get away with continuing to attack Lebanon as it's doing, along with all the other stuff it's doing in Palestine, then this is a very bad sign for the whole Middle East. But these are all big issues, and none of them are clear.
Yeah,
this is
I think
what's
I'm gonna wrap that up.
perplexing about this situation, and there's multiple war
far
fronts,
enough. That's a good
political,
foundation.
economic, sanctions, trade, aid, all kinds of different levels, different issues with different partners, and each of the actors, the Americans and Netanyahu and the Iranians, they're all playing to different audiences at the same time. It's extremely multi-layered, multi-dimensional, and this is one of the things that makes it so hard. And nobody's in charge. Trump wants to give the impression that he's in charge, but clearly he's not. He doesn't know what to do. They don't know how to get out of this, and they don't know how to rein in the Israelis. So I expect we're going to see a continuation of these tit-for-tat military strikes. It's fascinating that they each have hit each other. Israel, Hezbollah, Iran, and the U.S. They attack each other, do an attack, and then say, "Okay, we did it, and that's it." So they're not. These are not serious military assaults. What is serious is the total blockade on the Straits of Hormuz now, which is a place, and the Iranian announcement that they've created what they call a regional resistance belt with Yemen and Hezbollah and others all together, working much more closely together. And remember that Iran attacked Israel because Israel attacked Beirut about a week ago. So that makes it even more complicated. And this is again the situation where the U.S. and the Israelis are not clear about how to resolve this. They've never faced
that gets the figures
like Iran or
starting to be carved out. A little bit more dimension, a little bit more life and color.
You know, in a moment, Rami, we're going to be talking about the World Cup opening today. It's the first time
so we'll keep developing, shadowing, layering,
participating country, right?
and
United States versus Iran.
such as this painting continues to develop, but that's a good foundation. I think it's a good start. But that's it for the moment, so thank you for watching. That's Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion House, New Mexico, working on oil painting Their Disease, Your Gift. Have a good day, Earth.